You are listening to Within Tolerance, a podcast for machinists by machinists. I'm your host, Dylan Jackson of Protean Machining. And this week, the episode that many of you have been asking for, I have John Saunders here. How's it going, John?
Good. Thanks for having me, Dylan. Appreciate it.
So as I said before we started, I would be utterly shocked if anybody who is listening to this doesn't know who you are and at least one of your companies over the many years that you've been in the business. But please give us the rundown of, who you are and what you do.
Yeah, sure. And like you said, before we hit the record button, like you tell me what you want to hear about. I enjoy this journey, and it's fun to have moments like this to take a step back and be like, you know what? The trades have been good to me. I enjoy it. I get to do what I do. I love it. There's stress, there's highs and lows, but it's fun. And I enjoy being part of the community. And I was actually telling my wife this morning about this. And I was like, Dylan has really become the next, I don't want to say next generation, but when I started doing this, 15 years ago, there wasn't a lot of people out there. And you really have become this, what's the right word? The ringleader, or I give you a lot of credit for the podcast, how much effort you put into it and then building your business. It's been really awesome to follow along.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate that. I mean, I grew into machining watching your videos. So that's very full circle. Like I remember being at my first job, listening to the bomb very early on. So I really appreciate that.
Okay, I'll give you the short version, and then I'm going to let you pick and prod. Grew up here in Zanesville, Ohio. Went to East Coast for school. Graduated. Moved to New York City. Worked first for JP Morgan and their investment banking group. Then worked for a private equity fund for about 9 years. But right when I graduated college, I had shot competitive riflery in high school, and I'd grown up shooting. So I had this idea. I wanted a better target to shoot. I wanted a target I could shoot long range. It would fall down and then reset itself electromechanically, versus if you haven't shot before, you can kind of shoot paper, which has its drawbacks, static steel, which you can't always hear or see it, or go down and spray paint it. There's all sorts of business case reasons as to why this could be fun. And so went down a multi-year journey of hiring an engineer. And at the time I genuinely did not know you could take a cutting tool and cut metal, which in some respects, looking back, is quite unbelievable, because here I am, racking the bolt on a Remington 700 as a kid and not really thinking about, well, how did you make that butch or that bolt?
Right.
I just didn't, you don't know what you don't know.
So before we actually jump into Strike Mark, I wanted to always ask you, why business? Because it sounds like, I think you've mentioned that your grandfather was a machinist.
Yep. Yeah, sure.
So it sounds like your family was into making things. What steered you into business from that? I mean, especially, it seems like a lot of gun guys, and it sounds like you're into cars as well, end up in the trades.
Yeah.
So where was that switch flip that you're like, oh, actually, I want to go into business?
Actually, super easy explanation. I grew up, so I was born in 83, which puts me in the era of, I'm in 7th, 8th grade, early high school years, when the desktop computers were really, you're making me feel old, Dylan, but when desktop computers were coming to be a thing, and there were startups like, Acer and Compaq and Compaq, Packard Bell, Hewlett Packard, Dell, Gateway, but lots of people were still making computers. And I loved this. In 4th grade, I sort of learned BASIC and was able to either write my own code or copy and paste snippets, and wrote my own games. I played, not Lord of the Rings. There's a game called Lord on bulletin board services, which were dial-up. Wildcat made the software. My friend convinced his parents to get a second phone line. So we're telnetting in, you're figuring out this command line code. This is all DOS based. I freaking loved it. So long story short, I was a computer nerd. Loved it. Loved building computers. Loved figuring this stuff out. And then I ended up going to a pretty good high school. And for reasons that are weird, I guess, I realized, oh, I'm not that good at computers. Everybody else was better. And there's that weird, big fish, small pond, big fish thing of I was like, oh, wow. I don't think I want to go into college for computer science, because the people here, I mean, the number of the kids in this class went on to be Harvard, Microsoft, Facebook early employees. It was not a fair audience to judge yourself against, perhaps. But
right.
I just didn't want to become, I don't know. I truly understood what computer science would have meant either, to be fair, but I didn't want to do it. So I liked the idea of business. I liked the idea that most of the role models, mentors that I knew of, and this makes it sound more structured and formulaic in hindsight, but just the people that I thought hey, this person are we allowed to swear on this podcast?
Yeah.
Great. Because I don't swear on the bomb. And I think people think I'm clean. I'm not.
It shocked me the first time we met in person and I heard you start swearing and I was like, oh my God, John swears? No, I've got Chris Zapatini as a co-host every week. And if there was any remaining amount of not swearing on this podcast, Chris has definitely stripped that out. So
yeah. Well, I got rookie numbers compared to Chris on. These people had their shit together. And there is a part of me, I saw some of the questions that your Patreon audience and so forth has submitted. There's a part of me when it comes to like who I am and the luck aspect of like, I got born with a curiosity and some desire to both be a successful, but also not be a failure. And I think those are probably separate things. And so I was like, hey, I want to have my shit together. I want to figure stuff out. So when I applied to colleges, I applied to quite a few. I wasn't totally sure. And then I got into a school called Babson, which is known for its undergraduate business and entrepreneurship program, which is not super common at the undergrad level. Most business stuff is actually graduate level or MBA. And I sure as hell didn't want to study economics, like not interested.
Right.
And so I got into Babson. I got in with a really good scholarship and honors program, or they kind of like rolled out the red carpet, which makes you feel good. And I was like, hey, I like the school location. I like the curriculum. I like the fact that they want me. And I was like, I'm not going to overthink it. I'm going to Babson. I had been trying to get into probably higher tiered schools. And I'm so glad I went to Babson. And as an example, the freshman year, first semester, which, you're whatever, 18, 19 years old, they break the class into groups of 30 people and they give the group of 30 people $3,000. Now by give, it's, your own tuition money being redistributed.
Right. Yeah.
You have $3,000 and you have whatever it would be, like 6 months to set up and run a business, and a real business. And people do the cliched, like, okay, we're going to sell college snacks, or you can't sell alcohol, obviously, but like they do the cliched college things. Ours was selling a company called Party Time Clocks. We sold wall clocks where we customized the background for mementos, family and friends, trophy type things or whatever. And we turned a profit. Like it was super fun, but you kind of learn HR operations, IT, web sales, cash, accounting, reporting. And that kind of sets the framework for the next 4 years of curriculum where you get to kind of pick and choose what kind of classes you want to go into.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think I told you at IMTS this last year that, I've loved a lot of your videos, but the ones that you've done on business have been so helpful for me. Like the one specifically on machine tool loans informed our first loan so heavily. Like I went back and kind of played hardball with them and got a few of the things that you mentioned stricken from it. So like they had I'm blanking on it, but where they can call the loan early if they think prospective default.
Which is fucking absurd.
Oh, it's ridiculous. Yeah. And it was funny because on even our most recent loan for the HERMLA, I was like, you got to get rid of this. And they were like, well, I've been in the business 30 years and I've never seen somebody do what you're saying they're going to do. And I was like, it's in there though. Like it's written in there. You can do it. I don't care if you've never seen it done.
Well, and by the way, great. You haven't seen it in 30 years. I'm sure you won't have a problem striking it then.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. But it was so informative. It was you were the only and still I think probably the only person online who's like, here is all the business stuff that you have missed. Because that's I've said it a million times on the show. Like that has been the most learning I've had to do as a business owner, is like the business shit. Like I can figure out machining. Yes, I'm learning in machining, but it's not like foundational knowledge that I'm missing. Like I understand how to cut metal because I went to school and all this. I don't even know what I don't know in business still. Like I'm still coming across stuff where I'm like, oh, it really would have been nice to know that 5 years ago when I could have set it up a little better.
And it's not only knowing it, it's the confidence, or frankly, maybe even cockiness, to sit down with a banker, a professional in a suit in a large organization, and to look at him and say, there's no chance I'm signing this with this clause, or you need to add. I've done this with Haas financing where it's like, you're taking out the prepayment penalty. And the first time they did this, that's not what they did. I'm like, you little fuckers, that's not what I asked. And the writing matters, the language matters. That's a video we did? I don't even remember.
Yeah, you did something on, I'll find the video and put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
But it was, yeah, I remember watching it like 3 or 4 times in a row, like leading up to us starting to ask for loans, because I was like, this is all stuff. I don't know any of these words. And so John clearly knows what he's talking about. Let's watch this and really eke out every little bit that I need to watch for. And like, we thankfully found a bank that already had no prepayment penalties. It was a simple interest note.
Awesome.
And the only thing we had to strike was the prospective default.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Thanks. So you went to school, you start, investment banking, all of this stuff. How do you get the idea for Strike Mark? I mean, obviously you were a shooter, but you're in New York. Like, it's not like it's easy to go shooting in New York as far as I know. Like, I would think at that point that you're so far removed from your high school competitive shooting years that shooting's the last thing on your mind.
No, that's what I thought about it like in college, senior year of college, when we technically started the idea for Strike Mark, I had like prototypes delivered to my college dorm room, and I'm trying to figure out, like, I knew what CAD was, but I couldn't use it. Like, I didn't own a piece of CAD software. But we did have, I was traveling back to Ohio for breaks and shooting. I was still actively shooting in competitions, recreational competitions. So shooting was very much on top of it for me. Yeah. That was and it was just, it's the kind of, there's a ton of failures to Strike Mark. And one of them is like, it's the kind of like, what's the right word? Like amateur, like stupid, like, oh, great, you want a better target. Well, yeah, everyone would love a target, but it's not what you want, doesn't necessarily mean it's a good idea or a successful idea. But everyone that shot with them loved them, but it's the price point, the execution was a whole different story.
Right. I remember hearing you say that you had a product and not a business at that point.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is that it's a thing they hammer into you in places like Babson. It's not the idea, it's the execution. Can you actually, there's a million great ideas, invent printer paper that the ink dissolves after 2 weeks, you'll become a billionaire. Like, there's a ton of ideas out there. It's a question of whether you can bring it to market. What do they say? Is it a good idea? Will the market support it? And are you the right person to bring it to market? Those kind of 3 questions are questions you can kind of apply to any scenario in this genre.
Okay. So having that teaching and that knowledge, what made you go forward with it? Because I think this is the part of the story that many people know. So you bought a Tormach, had it in your apartment, or not even Tormach. You had a smaller one, a Tag, right? Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So let's talk through that. Like, in what world did you, having gone to business school, think like, let me get a Tag, let me start prototyping? Because it seems so antithetical to what they would teach you in business school.
Yeah. And, now that I'm 42 and I've been out of school, I've been out of school as long as I've been alive, right? Or twice as long. You're so green that, like, looking back and trying to, like, apply retrospective lenses is pointless, but you just don't know what you don't know, and you're young and you're hungry and you're dumb and you're foolish, and that's great. But what I knew was, I had a good job, and I was happy to kind of try to continue to snowball effect it, which is probably a big, either conscious or subconscious theme to my business and work, personal life, is just like, keep rolling it, building the snowball. But here's the short version of what really happened. Sent out RFQs on the internet. I had a business partner. Sent out RFQs, found 3 people. One of them was a retired car engineer who had moved to Colorado, kind of a one-man shop. Looking back, it's kind of funny now. He used at the time, what was that Unix? Was it Pro E? I was thinking it was Pro E.
Okay.
But like had like a Unix like mini mainframe in his house to like power this software and whatever it would have been 2007. And he designed his first prototype. And then he had a bunch of contacts in his network, because the other sort of like lesson learned was like, oh my God, here, I don't know anything about manufacturing. There's nothing on my resume that qualifies me to be the one leading this effort other than just stubbornness and passion. Because there's sheet metal parts, there's injection molded parts, there's circuit boards, there's machined parts, there's motors. And, for example, we spent a bunch of money, had circuit boards made, only to find out that the piezo crystal on the whatever 555 circuit was getting like destroyed from the impact of the bullet.
Oh, I bet. Like, that crystal's gone.
Yeah, right. So that's what happened. I don't remember the exact chronology, but basically we spent probably about $15,000 on the first prototype. And I think that was probably more on just the cash costs for the prototype, not counting the design work we had hired and done. We got this prototype done. We did this crazy trip where because my job was very demanding. So I basically found out I was going to have 36 hours, right? I had to be at the office and just booked a flight to Colorado. My buddy drove down from Idaho, picked me up en route, and we went to Garden of the Gods, and legally, albeit somewhat sus, we're shooting this target for the first time with this guy in a borrowed 30-06. And, it went great. And then we learned a lot, but also it's the first prototype. Spencer Webb would say, this is supposed to last 15 minutes. I'm thinking that we could go to market with this.
Right. Of course. Yeah. Oh, man. So where did you find your business partner for this? Was he an old friend or?
We had become very good college friends, and we both had this kind of hey, let's conquer the world. Let's figure something out. Let's do it together. We got along great. We were social friends. The girls that we were dating at the time, mine became my wife. We were good friends. And, honestly, that's my biggest sort of thing was I now appreciate more of how much he brought to the table. And there were just more circumstances that we can get into if you want, that led to a, acrimonious split up that was really detrimental, because there were some hard feelings, but really I had nothing but good things to say. He really complimented a lot of my shortnesses and weakcomings and skill sets in a way that I don't know if I appreciated as much at the time, but it's also, life's life. Somebody's got to do what you got to do.
Right. So let's go over quickly what that timeline looked like. You got the TAG, started NYC, CNC somewhere in there, and then moved to Zanesville. How did that?
Zanesville's way later.
Okay. So I guess let's go over that timeline then. You got the machine. What even wanted you to start making videos on YouTube? Because at that point, it's pretty early days YouTube as well.
The joke I like to say is YouTube was kind of like Real Player. You didn't know if it was, I don't even know if you remember Real Player.
Oh, I definitely do.
Okay, yeah. Well, it's not around anymore. YouTube wasn't this clear household name success. No, so what had happened was after that first prototype and we got our butt kicked, we decided to trickle some more money into the Rev 2 prototype because we knew what it needed to be, but we gave up. I was out of money. And,
oh, wow. Okay.
And so we went our separate ways in a very hey, it is what it is. And that's when Jan went into he went into BUDS, the Navy SEAL training program. He was a couple of years older, and that, my words, not his, turned him into kind of a father figure within his boat crew at BUDS. He dropped out during Hell Week. He was on the Smurf crew because he was shorter, and they really shit on those guys.
Oh, yeah.
And it was funny because I was obviously in touch with him and following through this journey, although he's radio silent during BUDS. And when he dropped out, I remember thinking he's going to be devastated, lifelong devastation. He was no, totally at peace with this. He's I was going to walk away with a life-ending injury if I stayed in. He was completely understood. There wasn't an ounce more to give to it, which really surprised me, given that it's you're in, this is big.
Oh, yeah.
And he ended up living with his best buddies from that program, got assigned to, was an even number SEAL team, which is Virginia Beach, East Coast. The odd numbers are West Coast. And he was, again, complimenting my weaknesses. He was that guy that could bring a crowd together, be that fun guy, that leader, all that. I'm happy to be alone programming a part in camp, if you know what I mean. So he got in with them, and that when he did that, I was well, hey, I still like what we were talking about with the strike mark stuff. But when our engineer had put us on the phone with his machinist, I remember thinking, he asked me about this huge pivot arm that they had made out of A2. And I look back on this, I'm oh my God, how are we doing this? This part would be $3,000. It's
right.
Insane. And they asked me about a tolerance, and I answered like a carpenter. I answered well, maybe 1/16 of an inch. I didn't know what a thou was. So I thought, let me buy a CNC machine. They look really cool. I'd done a little bit of woodworking. And Sears, actually, I can go really off topic here, so brain me in if you want. But Sears had a kind of looked like a in-feed, what we call it, not a planer, where they would deck two sides of a board at the same time. Planer, right?
Yeah, planer. Yeah.
But they had one that could move a board through a stationary, almost like an Okuma
I know exactly what you're talking about. It was the little, it's like ShopBot or something, and it was the little router that, yes, we had one in my high school.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like we
I'm
never
sure it was
used
a
it because
rebate.
nobody knew how to use it, but
Yeah.
I 100% know what you're talking about. Yes.
And with the benefit of hindsight, this was an amazing time. I'm living in New York City. Arduino had just came about. 3D printers had just came about. Makerspaces had just came about. And in fact, I was hanging out and taking classes at a makerspace in Brooklyn called NYC Resistor, where Bree, Zach, and whoever the third guy was were literally sitting there making the first MakerBot, and none of us knew anything other than like, yeah, these guys are making this new printer. Like just sitting there
No
talking to
way.
them. Oh yeah. And like I know Bree and knew Zach at the time, but like not in like a we're tight way, just in like everyone's just here. They had one of the first epilogues when Epilogue was finally breaking into that consumer market. And like, it just was like, you look back and you're like, God, this was the perfect confluence of all these technologies, which is super, super cool. So I bought a CNC machine. And I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to surprise Jan. I'm going to see if I can make this whole second prototype in my New York City apartment. Like, so I would spend like 3 weeks making a part that I would walk out on a Kuma and make in like 10 minutes.
Right.
Sorry, some long-winded answer. This is 2007-ish time frame, and it took us about a year, and I ended up making that whole second prototype, including, because like, we were out of money, including buying like ferric chloride and copper-clad board and machining the circuit boards because I didn't want to, there was no PCB way, there was no Senko-Sen, there's no Xometry.
No way.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that's
circuit board
trial by fire right there. Like you would either come out of that hating manufacturing or loving it. I feel like there's no middle ground there. Yeah.
Yeah. And like everyone, I mean, not everyone else, but everyone else in New York City is like, hey, nightlife, restaurant scene. Like, I'm like, I leave my job and go back and like make circuit boards.
Right.
Or like polish aluminum parts in my bathtub to figure out what grit sandpaper works best.
So did you get any hate from neighbors because those machines are so wimpy that there's no way it was making good noises?
Never got, no. I did get, we had a carbon monoxide detector go off once and went down to Dwayne Reed, bought a new one, installed the new one. It went off. And so then we called 311 in New York. The fire department shows up and they're going through our apartment, which is like, they show like fire trucks and gear on. You feel terrible, but like, carbon monoxide does kill people.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And hilarious. They walk into, this is the first apartment that my wife and I had together, and it's called a Junior 4, which is a 2-bedroom, but the second bedroom is legally too small to call it a bedroom. So they call it a Junior 4. And that's where I have my little machine shop with the tag and other stuff. And the firemen finally get into that corner of the room, and the one guy looks back at the other guy. He's like, hey, Ken, come over and check this out. This is insane. And then we spent like 10 minutes talking about all the stuff in there. They didn't care. I did get in trouble with the building sometimes because I would powder coat, spray paint, and then once I tried Cerakoting in either, there's tons of emergency sterile cases that
Right.
I never used. And then once I did it in an unused apartment that was ready for lease, but I figured it'd be empty for a few days. And I know I was careful with drop cloths, but don't Cerakote in a New York City apartment. It ends up that it smells way worse than I realized.
That is amazing. All right. So you made this second prototype. Where did you go from there? What was it better than the first one?
Yes, it was. My memory gets fuzzy now, but a bunch of things happened, including at one point I tried to quit my day job. We can come back to that. I put the thing in a Pelican case, rented a zip car, and started driving around New England looking for factories. That worked. I found a water jet laser shop in Rhode Island that quarterbacked the whole thing. They were buying the steel. He looked like a really rough and tumbled machinist. Like he was 65 at the time, like really rough guy, MIT grad. And I think he took pity on me. He's like, here's a kid this kid's got fire in him. And he ended up doing a bunch of the redesign to simplify stuff, brackets and all that. And then they were our manufacturing partner. And that happened. We went to our first trade show. That all was like 2010-ish.
And you're still living in New York, still working as an investment banker at this point?
Working for the private equity firm.
Okay.
But yes. And then, but quickly thereafter, I wanted to have a truck so I could drive around, and I wanted to have guns, which you can't have in basic short answer, you can't have in New York City. It gets complicated. And wanted a walkout basement for a machine. So we were like the only people that ever leave Manhattan for the suburbs without a kid.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I literally picked out a house that had a walkout basement that I could get a Tormach into. Tormach to me at the time, it's hard to explain this. Tormach to me might as well have been a Hermla with an RS02, like just flex, whatever. Like it was insane how excited I was to get that machine.
That's amazing. Yeah. I didn't realize, I must have just forgotten that there was a period there where you were in the suburbs in New York before you moved to Ohio.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And then, so at what point there did it become a real product that you were selling? Like you have this place in Rhode Island now to make it. How quickly after that did you start selling units?
Timeline's fuzzy, but pretty soon, because we hit the pound. We got a quote unquote, I call it a contract. I mean, the reality is it was probably 20 or 30 targets that we sold to the parent of the SEALs, which is called Naval Special Warfare Group. My buddy Jan got in with this guy named Tracy who ran that. They bought targets. And then that led to like, okay, asymmetrical warfare group, and then the Army wanted some. Then the State Department wanted some. Then nuclear security teams who, look, to be totally fair, these places have like use or lose it budgets. They're looking for toys. This is also there was this point in time where ammo had spiked and the AR 500 plate was hard to get. So there was some weirdness going on as well in that world. But when you found customers that wanted to buy them, they would just buy them. On the flip side, I think in the total, we sold under 10, maybe under 5 to true like website random, just Joe Smo logs on and buys one.
Right.
They
were about $1,000, something like that?
Correct. Yeah. Good memory. What had happened, and all this credit goes to Jan, he had been a skydiver. He had owned GoPros before they were a household name. He was like, we were going to these ranges and shooting targets. He was going to the SEAL ranges and shooting with like belt-fed M249s. They shot one at a Carl Gustav rocket at once, which is we have the footage of it, which is nuts. Or I don't think we actually hit the target with it, but like we're filming all this badass footage, and he's like, John, can you mount a GoPro to a Picatinny rail? And I'm like, I can definitely do that. By now, I'm using a Libre, which is a poor man's SolidWorks, and Sprut Cam from Tormach, and so I designed this GoPro Picatinny mount. Which to this day, when you go on eBay and look at the knockoffs of these, they're still using our design, and they're still using photos of my AR-15 in my New York suburb basement of the pictures we took to show the various different, we had a contour mount, we had a GoPro mount, we had a 1/4-20 thread mount for DSLRs, blah, blah, blah. So those actually sold pretty well.
Amazing. That is so funny. All right. So then, like, I guess, what happens first? Do you move to Ohio? Does things at Strike Mark start falling apart? And also, at what point in here is YouTube kind of becoming more than just a hobby?
YouTube started way back, still in the New York days. I had shot some family, like home vacation movies with like pocket cameras, enjoyed editing in iMovie, and just thought it was fun to like memorialize life and trips. And what happened in New York City was I'm stuck. I'm in New York City. Practical Machinist and CNC Zone were around, but there weren't a lot of other resources to learn. And I don't know anything. Like I don't know any of this. And so to the extent I started to learn, I thought both because I'd like to think that I'm a decent human being, but also it was a good way to ingratiate yourself into a community, was like give back more than you take. You leave the world a better place. And so I thought if I'm going to learn something, there's probably 10 or 20 other people that would want to learn this stuff. That's kind of what I thought in my head. And so there's videos still on our channel of like me taking a fly cutter at 3,000 RPMs on a TEG, trying to deck off steel with a high speed steel. Like, yeah.
So actually, a quick story to that point. In addition to your business videos being very helpful for us, your video, we still, up until very recently, were using the Harbor Freight air dryer for our entire shop. And your video on adjusting the pressures to prevent it from freezing up was the one that Brad found when it first started happening, when we first bought it 10 years ago. And that was how we fixed it. He was like, dude, you'll never guess whose video just saved our ass. And I was like, I don't know. I have zero idea. And he's like, Saunders had a video on fixing the pressures. I'm like, holy shit. Okay.
These purchases, like that was a $300 purchase back then. That was a big deal. Like I was like, this thing has to last, whatever.
Yeah. It's wild thinking back. Like I've had to put together numbers for loans and stuff. And then when you start looking at the hard numbers, you're like, it's insane. Like, especially when we've got our first brother, looking back, I'm like, how did they give us any money? You know, like just based on our like annual revenue at that point, I'm like, in what world was this going to turn out okay for them? And that, you know, I'm thankful that they gave it to us, but comparing it to our numbers now, it's like, man, I wouldn't have given myself a loan.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
So you're making these videos, but at what point does it start to turn where you're like, oh, this is more than just like a hobby. This is more than something that I'm just going to do for fun. You know, when do you become the personality and like everybody knows you in the manufacturing community and it becomes more of like, I can get ad revenue from this and all of that?
All I remember, first off, I actually lost my YouTube password for like 2.5 years after we had made a number of videos. I didn't care. I was in way before there was monetization. And then,
right.
And then I again, don't remember the timing, but either found my password, started making again. And then, or the partner platform came to be, and then I was making big money, Dylan, like maybe $150 a month, $200 a month. And I'm thinking, no, but this is insane. Cause now,
from nothing to that is a big jump. Yeah.
Well, yeah. And now it's like, not that my girlfriend's fiance, wife ever really cared, but like now I don't have to be like, hey, I want to dip into joint checking to buy this because I don't need revenue to buy this thing. Now it's like, hey, I can just take this $200 that's going to show up every month from YouTube and pay it by tooling and whatnot. And those were fun days. I didn't have a care in the world about comparing myself. Keith Fenner, Turn Right Machine Works, if you know him, he was one of the OGs who was really influential. And I'm fortunate to say I got to know him decently well as too. In fact, I at one point really thought about begging him to like let me come move to Cape Cod and study under him. He doesn't know this, but like I wanted so badly to like just go somewhere and learn. So that's why I was on these videos. Like you can't knock on a machine shop door in Jersey and ask to learn or see, and there's no YouTube to speak of. But it never. So the last thing I'll say, and then I'll shut up on that question is, or you can ask me more if you want, is when I moved to Ohio which is 2014, strike market had already blown up. I can come back to that if you want. When I moved to Ohio, I'd left a good job. I'd asked my wife to leave her job. We left our community. My wife is from Massachusetts, so cool, the Northeast, where we could just drive to see her family. It's a big deal. And I told myself, hey, this YouTube thing is worth something. I don't know what that is, but I'm going to have the discipline to do a video a week. And I did a video a week for about 10 years, I think. 1,000 videos. You know, look, some of them weren't great. Some of them had staying power and were great. And I'd hope to say I never veered to like, I have very like opinionated opinions about what YouTube is today in terms of like, okay, which company is paying me to do what sponsorship and promotion. And I'd be lying if I didn't say we made some money off YouTube over the years, but years ago, I was just like, this is zero interest in becoming a Titan. I honestly couldn't live with myself. I couldn't sleep. It would suck. It would take all the fun out of it. I wanted to share what I want to share about and talk about, which doesn't match the YouTube algorithm of video, like all that stuff, production quality and investing in it and film quality and the pace of scheduling and the crazy clickbait titles. So there is a dilemma that I don't have the answer to of like, I enjoy, and I still put out videos because I want to, but there's something about like, you should just stop because it's not the right platform and it doesn't fit the mold and blah, blah, blah. So,
right. Well, it's changed a lot since you started it for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's go back to Strike Mark. Did it end before you moved to Ohio, or was that, you said it was. So let's talk about the end of Strike Mark there. I texted you that like, that's something that I haven't really heard a lot from you about. And I've had people reach out to me asking me like, oh, how do you and Brad make it work as business partners? And very often using you as the counterpoint of like, Saunders has said he'll never have a business partner again and that it blew up and all this stuff. And like, I didn't know how to answer because I was like, I don't know why it failed. So give us the details. How does something that seemingly, fits both as a passion and as a business, what made that go away?
So there were some stress points like there are in any partnership. I don't regularly talk with Jan, but it was about, so this blew up in like 2012 and probably 3 years ago. So about 10 years had passed. We started texting a little bit. And it actually felt kind of nice in a weird way. So I don't want to, out of respect to him, I don't want to share too much about his background other than to say, he didn't have to work a day in his life. But he chose to. He chose to go to college, first one in his family, I believe. He chose to go in the Navy for a sense of identity and to serve his country. He chose to work his ass off. And I give him a lot of credit for somebody who didn't have to.
Right.
That also led to some stress from my point of view of, and I'll give what may be a slightly exaggerated scenario, but not really. And it's like 1 week he's in Idaho, next week he's in Florida, next week he's in Thailand for Muay Thai for 6 months or 6 weeks. And it's kind of like, here I am grinding at a desk job in New York, trying to earn my place in the world. And you are, you're living it up. Not that you work hard, but like just woo. But ultimately the best I remember it, and truth is a funny thing, because I do think if you've never listened to Malcolm Gladwell's revisionist history episode on truths, and even the example of how Brian Williams from NBC incorrectly stated that he was on a helicopter that got attacked. And in reality, he's conflating memories that weren't his. And it sounds very convenient for a news anchor to sensationalize him possibly being the attack. I actually am inclined to believe that because, for example, I've told the Strike Mark GoPro, the role GoPro mounts played. I've told that story so many times to myself and to others, but I don't really remember the specifics of how it happened.
Right. You're sense? Remembering your own story. No, I completely agree. And I think it is both a wonderful and terrible thing to happen in your life when you get caught out on one of those.
Yeah.
When you've been telling a story for so long and then one of the other people involved is there for once and they're like, that's not how it happened at all. Right. What are you talking about? And it rocks you to your core. And I think that I hope everyone has that at some point in their life. Like it's not enjoyable at all, but it is very important, I think, as a human to recognize like, oh man, like you keep telling a story so many times and it is going to just morph into like either the best telling story or you are going to be in the best light possible. And I completely understand. Yeah.
I appreciate you saying that. So my side of the story is the GoPro mounts slid onto a Picatinny rail, which is just a double dovetail. And we really needed a quick detach version. And that was not something that I could figure out how we were going to make with a Tormach at a price point, blah, blah, blah. I didn't have a great answer. And we needed to figure that out because you didn't want to have to slide the mount all the way off because that would require you to take off other accessories on the firearm.
Right, grips, stuff like that, yeah.
So I'm sort of struggling with this. And then Jan had gotten in with a guy named Larry Vickers, who's a pretty legit name in the industry. I think he was a former Delta guy. And Larry wanted to do this like thing with us that was going to start manufacturing these like machined billet grips. Here's what's funny in hindsight. I poo-pooed this. I was not a fan. I was like, how are we going to do this? I don't want to do more partnership and like joint venture shit and blah, blah, blah. And the reality was we probably would have made so much freaking money that it would have been ridiculous. To think about in 2010, if we had broken into the AR world, making lowers and making all this stuff, we would have freaking killed it. And Jan would have been great. And like, I don't know that the odds of him listening to this are very high, but like, I mean that genuinely. Like he had that vision that I don't have that would have been freaking amazing. But what ultimately happened was we were 50-50 owners. We did not have a buy-sell agreement. We had an operating agreement, but I think it was not helpful. And I was stressed. And I remember telling myself I wasn't willing to both spend all my savings. I'd saved up some more money by then. I wasn't willing to both blow my savings and leave my day job. I had a good job and leave my job to sort of give Strike Mark a go at it.
Right.
And I was like, we really need to figure out who's running the ship and who's making these decisions on shit like partnerships with Larry Vickers and whatnot. And I went to the dog park where I wasn't home and let my dog run and called Jan. And I was like, here's my kind of thing. Somebody needs to run Strike Mark. I understand if you want to run it, I probably will pass on being your number two just because I want to do my own thing, which really was a genuine, like, I meant it, but short version, I think it probably got taken as a threat or ultimatum in a bad way or whatever. And so that quickly led to shit going south real quick. I had this equipment and what are we going to do? And, litigation got threatened and that sucks. It really sucked.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, it sounded, over the years, hearing you bring it up kind of tangentially in videos, it definitely sounded like a sore spot. So I always knew that it clearly wasn't an amicable split.
Yeah.
So I guess looking back on that, what are the biggest lessons you've learned or that you did learn about partnerships? Like if you had to do it all over again, obviously hindsight is 2020, but like if you were going to enter a new partnership today, what are the things that you learned from Strike Mark that would change how you operated?
It is the analogy or example where marriage is the perfect analogy. Like it is not fun when you're courting and dating the love of your life and you want to propose to him or her. And you're like, by the way, could you look at this prenup? But that's what it is. And it's actually way easier in a business context because it's not marriage and love. But like,
right.
That's, in my opinion, there's two real answers here. Number one, you should have an operating agreement that includes a buy-sell. In my opinion, the buy-sell, there's only one buy-sell. And it's what is it? You cut, I pick. So the buy-sell includes a pre-negotiated, very simple purchase and sale agreement. You negotiate this before you start the business. That's done, and that's in an envelope. Then you do sealed bids, and this doesn't need to be formal. It can be with a friend, a banker, an escrow person, whoever somebody you trust, a lawyer. And basically, if you get to that point, let's say you and I are partners, Dylan, and we go where frustrations, we want out, one of us wants out, then Dylan and I need to go submit our offer bids for, and let's say I bid 5,000 and you bid 6,000, you get the business. And I have to sign the purchase and sale agreement as a seller that I already agreed to. You got to come up with the money. So that's part of the problem with these sorts of scenarios is that they have to be actionable. So the counterparty has to be able to act on the contract to buy the company out.
Right.
So that's point number one is have that. Point number two is the thorny thing are assets. So, and you don't have to answer this, but like how much Prodium owns in terms of IP and business and customer list is very different than owning a Hermla or a Brother or a building, et cetera. Right.
It's much more real. There's much less ambiguity of like, what is the IP cost versus like a Hermla has a price tag and it's like, this is what it is.
What I'm saying though is it's actually cleaner to separate the assets out. So in the Strike Mark example, let's just be blunt. Jan had money. I didn't. Jan should have bought the equipment because he has a balance sheet. He should have bought that equipment in his own LLC or SPE, and then he should have leased it or financed it to us and kept the equipment separated.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Because then we're arguing about Strike Mark and what its value is and the price point of it. And you're just talking about inventory or IP or the customer list. You're not looking at,
it's not like inflated because of the
value of the equipment.
Yeah, I gotcha. Okay.
And it gets really complicated because lenders aren't going to take, in most situations, let's use the fictitious examples that you and I are in a business together. And we start Newco Machining. Newco Machining is the signer on the promissory note or the guarantee to the bank, as are Dylan and John jointly and separately, which means I'm responsible for the whole note. If you go to, fleet of
leave, die, whatever. Yeah.
So most banks aren't going to release one of us ever, let alone without some extenuating circumstances. So the problem with a buy-sell that involves equipment is that you're not going to get me off the guarantee. It gets complicated there.
Oh, that's very smart. I wouldn't have thought about that. Okay. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So, okay, so this fell apart, whatever the course of 6 months or something like that.
Yeah.
You're in New York still. You got this job. You got a Tormach. You got a YouTube channel. Why Ohio? I mean, I know you had family there, but like, again, that's leaving your very well-paying job to not have that. So let's talk through that decision.
Our son William was born. He was about 6 months old, and I realized congratulations, by the way. I know we've talked briefly, but you have a still very newborn.
Yeah, she's 8 weeks, eight or
Yeah,
9 weeks at this point.
very.
So yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
You look great for.
I appreciate it. I overslept and I apparently slept right through my alarm. My wife woke me up like 35, 40 minutes after my alarm and was like, "Don't you have to leave?" I was like, "Oh yeah, okay, thanks, bye."
That's great. What's your daughter?
Yeah.
What's your daughter's name? Or
Molly.
Molly. Awesome. That's great.
Thanks.
So after Strike Mark blew up, I ended up buying the Tormach, and I think that was the majority of the equipment that we owned out from Jan at the original purchase price. That was another point of contention. Was I was like, "Hey, it's used equipment now," and he was like, "F you, pay me the full amount for it," and I ended up just paying him the full price of it. It was I was the only one to use it. It was in my basement. It's not totally unreasonable.
Right. Well, and you, at that point, I don't see you giving it to him or having him buy it and then buying another one.
Exactly.
It's already in your house.
Emotions run high though, like.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
So then I did job shop work, and again, looking back, it was pathetic what I did, like compared to now, but we did job shop work. We were doing YouTube stuff. There's no one out there doing this. So we were one of the few games in town on this. We got a shocking number of inquiries from people making random stuff. And that's how I learned, made more parts, bought more tools, loved it. And then realized I got to get out of Dodge. If we don't leave the burbs now, I'll probably never leave because your social network and family and job. And we looked, Dylan, when I say everywhere, like Denver, we actually toured houses in Denver. We looked in other parts of New England. We looked in other parts of Ohio. No disrespect, I couldn't live with your heat, the South. So we didn't look at Arizona, Texas, Florida. But it was kind of jump ball. And my wife had a job. She had a great job. That was probably the hardest part, was asking her to leave a job that she loved, working as effectively an executive in the high-end fashion world. And Columbus, Ohio has a guy named Les Wexner who bought and turned Abercrombie & Fitch into what we know it was in the 90s. Then he started Victoria's Secret. He started The Limited, Designer Shoe Warehouse, DSW. There's all of these fashion clothing companies that are, drumroll, in Columbus.
No way. I had no idea.
So if you want to work in that world, it's New York, LA, or Columbus. And so we realized my wife was going to probably be able to find a job in Columbus, which is, so we initially thought about moving to Columbus. I live in Zanesville, which is about an hour away, but might as well be 10 hours away. Like culturally, it's very different. And so we looked at Columbus, we looked at some other suburb towns. Then I was like, wait a minute here. I never thought I'd come back to Zanesville. No hard feelings. There was never a long-term, I got to figure this out. We do have a farm here that means a lot to me and I'm proud to be part of, but it was never going to change my life just to have that be part of the story.
Right.
And then I was like, wait a minute here. Zanesville's not half bad. We can still travel and see the world and do that. It's a great place for cost of living, raising a family, blah, blah, blah. And so, it was, and the friends that I had stayed in touch with were much more, I'll call it agrarian. So in 2014, the friends that we still had were into guns and hunting and 4-H and raising cattle. And my wife is like, what the fuck? And now, and thank God this is true, and this may sound bad out of context, but you can be in Zanesville and go get a latte and go to a yoga class.
Right.
It's not just that stuff.
Yeah, it's not farms. Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah.
And so we do have very grateful. We have a great life and a great set of friends. So to answer your question, that's when I was like, wait a minute here. And my first shop was on the farm, which I think that was probably rent free or heavily subsidized. It was probably rent free at the time. It was not much space, but nevertheless.
Right. I remember you doing it and watching it all on YouTube. And I think everyone's question was just why? What the fuck is going on?
Why what?
Why Ohio? Why?
Oh, yeah.
I don't think anybody, you were NYC CNC.
Mm-hmm.
That sounded insane.
Maybe that's proof that I didn't plan on leaving or move, you know what I mean? Moving back.
Right.
Anyway.
So what was your plan? You were leaving your job, I assume, at that point, or were you working remotely? Okay.
I left. Yep.
And did you know what you were doing going to Ohio? Not did you know what you were doing? Sorry. Did you have a job lined up, or did you have something that you had lined up, or were you just kind of I've got some savings, I'll figure it out when I get there, I'm back home kind of thing?
No. Yes, we had some savings for sure, but it wasn't wasn't a ton. But and my wife didn't have a job either. And so that was actually a real issue on buying a house because we couldn't get a mortgage because we didn't have a W-2 income.
No.
But I had enough savings, even though I didn't have to use the savings, I had enough savings, and my family's grown up here. So we called a local community bank, sat down with them, and they're like, this is who I am. And so they gave us what's called a balance sheet mortgage. So they did not syndicate it off through Fannie and Freddie, which is what every mortgage in the world is done in conforming. We later, when my wife got a W-2 job, refied that into a conforming mortgage at a lower rate. That's how we bought a house. She got a job within 3 months. But I had no fallback. I had no at the time I could have gotten a job. I could have gone to, I don't know, I wasn't qualified to work in the metalworking industry at the time per se. I remember thinking I'm doing about 100,000 gross revenue on job shop work, which.
Wow. That's pretty good.
It was not nothing. It wasn't like I was starting from absolute zero.
Right.
Now, when I look back and you actually, that's revenue. Like that could be 15,000 in profit, if you will.
Right.
But that was my thought was like, let's figure out how to make a go of this from there.
Okay. So let's talk through the years following that. You eventually end up with this shop. I don't really know the story on how that all works out. I want to talk into the development of your first product as well, because I think that that's a big turning point in your career and in your story. So yeah, how do we get closer to where we are now?
So my shop on the farm was my grandfather's shop that he built when he retired. He was a fabricator. Tip of the hat to him. He died just about 10 years ago now, but he was my hero growing up. I spent a ton of time with him. He worked his ass off. He was a cantankerous old motherfucker who made no unclear feelings about how he felt about you. And I loved every part of it in the sense that, as a kid, I'd want to go work with him on the farm. And so I wanted to ride in the tractor bucket and he'd be driving out. We'd be going to cut up a tree and I'd get bounced in the bucket and hurt. And he'd be like, you fucking wanted to ride in the bucket. You deal with it.
All right. Yeah. I think many of us have had family members like that for sure.
And I don't mean it like he was irresponsible or unsafe, or he was horribly irresponsible and unsafe, but I just mean it in the sense that he just cut from a different cloth.
Right. It came from a time where you made your choices and you're going to, you made your bed, you're going to lie in it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And he worked his ass off. He really did. But he also had that hilarious, funny side to him that I try to make sure we don't all of us lose the perspective in life about having fun and all that. And so he would have been 80 at the time, still working his ass off. And he was the one who was like, hey, you're young, you're starting this business here. You need to come move in with me. I mean, he was emphatic. And that was a mistake on my part because yes, I'm frugal. I'm a bootstrapper. I thought this is perfect. He has all this equipment. He has drill presses, bandsaws. This is going to be great, force multiplier. Well, ends up, a lot of his stuff was frankly shit equipment. I thought that bandsaw was awesome. It was a Harbor Freight Dillon. I didn't know that at the time.
Right.
But really what I failed to foresee, and I'm not sure if this is worth trying to share as a lesson for other people, maybe, was this guy's my childhood idol, but really any 70 or 80-year-old or any male who's like, hey, you should come share my personal private shop that I've had alone for 30 years and you should come move in with me. Red fucking flag.
Right.
Fast forward a year or two, he didn't like that I had changed the dynamic of what that life was like. And he got grumpier. He was grumpy to begin with. He got even grumpier. And we had a blow up. We had a blow up one day. And I remember calling my dad and he was kind of like, hey, okay, you need to move out then. I'm not brokering a peace treaty here. And he wasn't wrong. So I called a friend of a friend who had a small side of they had a woodwork, they were a general contractor that had a small room that they ran popcorn business out of. And I was like, hey, Ben, can I rent that shop from you at least for 6 months to get my foot on the ground? He's like, yeah, I'll do that for you. And that was the building next door to where I am right now that we later ended up buying that building as our training building.
No way.
Yeah.
That is super cool.
Yeah.
So at what point here were you fully moved into your current shop when you started the SMW product line and all of that? Or
yes.
Do you have, so I guess you're still running the YouTube, you're doing job shop stuff out of your tiny little room. At what point there do you start doing the shop tours and things like that? Because I think that those are maybe another big turning point in the YouTube career for you?
That's a great question. I mean, obviously the answer is out there. I don't know though.
Okay.
I do know that I didn't start like it all snowballed together where people knew me, I knew them, I had more power to say, hey, I will be here or fly out or do this. I give a ton of credit to like Al Watmo, Kurt Chan, the Autodesk. That was one of the first times that I ever traveled. So that early Fusion Cab, IMTS, trade shows, AU, Fusion Summits, and then, I forget, like, I was in Boston for my wife's family. So like, I remember that's probably why I did the helical tour. Like, it wasn't all, I never ever, no one's going to have access to these records. You might be able to call me a liar on this. I don't believe I have ever once charged money for a video though, like that. I think one exception, to be fair, would be Boring Co. paid us for one of their grinding videos that I flew out to Chicago for. It was always
their second one, maybe.
Yeah,
you went out to look at their new machine or something like that. I just watched them on the other day.
But even then, it was like basically time and travel. Like, it was never like, my understanding right now is if you approach one of the people in this industry for this sort of a stuff, I'm not going to name the names here. You know who they are. It's like 5 figures, 6 figures. Like,
oh yeah,
this was This was more like, hey, I'm going to be in Indiana or Illinois or Denver. Who can I find? Who can I tour? It's just so fucking fun. It's awesome to see. It's what John in New York wanted 10 years ago.
Right.
That's how it happened.
No, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So at that point, are you kind of relying in part on the YouTube revenue, or was it still just not even a thought at that point?
No, our peak, I don't know, Dylan. That's a good question. Our peak YouTube revenue was, peak. Now, this is when I had Julie and we were actually putting a video out each week that was much more time on our side, was probably $5,000 a month, but that effectively was eaten up by the overhead of making the video. So it sounds awesome. Like, holy cow, you're making 60, 70 grand a year off of YouTube AdSense payments. That's insane.
But you had Julie doing most of it. So that's kind of paying her salary.
Yes,
yeah.
Right. And there was stuff, I guess, now that I think about it, like, okay, so my Sandvik rep got to know me. He recommended to his boss, and then Sandvik was like, hey, we're going to fly you to Sweden. So like, that's the classic, like, okay, of course they paid for my trip to Sweden, but there was no money exchanged for what I did.
That just happens. Like, I was fully open that like Hermla flew me out to their open house before we bought a machine. That's just something they do though. Like, and I think that's just smart money on any of these companies' parts.
Sure. I want to make sure I stay humble about this. I feel like I was a trailblazer to where many of these companies were uncomfortable. It was the first time people had filmed. It was weird. Whereas it so quickly flipped. To where now it's like, how do we get every influencer on our team, content created? And then it's like, as soon as that happened, I'm out. Like, I lost interest because, weirdly, I'm like, now I don't feel special anymore. It's just, you know what I mean? And then it's like, well, now you're asking me to do it. No, I was like, I wanted to do it.
Right. So how did you end up buying and moving into your shop that you have now? Because it sounds like you were never making enough on either YouTube or as a job shop to really make that business case a super compelling business case. I mean, it's a big building, and you have or had FedEx as a tenant for a while.
Yeah, you just answered the question.
Okay, so it just was a good business decision versus the right thing for your shop.
Yeah. And so like part of this is, it's not luck. It's like how the future will be kind to me for I intend to invent it. Right. Rewind. When I got to pick which investment banking group I worked in, I chose mergers and acquisitions, which is the way they structured it was weird. Everyone did M&A, but there was an M&A focus group that was the most elite. I did technology, computer stuff, and I did real estate because I didn't know shit about real estate, but we had a family farm, which has a rental property on it. It has farming country producing land. But rewind to the beginning of this podcast, everybody I knew that I thought had their shit together either knew something or owned real estate. I didn't know shit about real estate. So I wanted to go into real estate. I chose to go. That's why I picked that investment banking. Well, it ends up real estate investment banking is like floating $100 million bonds for publicly traded hotel REITs. Like, you don't learn shit about real estate. You learn about the public world of major hotels, casinos, office companies. So when I had the chance to move into private equity, which if you want to call it a dirty word and a dirty term, frankly, I'll agree with you wholeheartedly. it wasn't quite like that when I did it, in my defense. And also I went to work for a group of 5 people that was effectively an overgrown family office. We had a relatively small amount of money, and we went out and we bought office buildings in tertiary markets, a lot, actually Phoenix, Scottsdale, Denver, Reno, Spokane, Washington, Raleigh.
Oh, interesting.
And there were 5 or 6 of us that were doing all this. Like, it was great because this was boots on the ground. This was like, okay, I'm in Charlotte looking at a Smithfield hog facility that has 6 rooftop condensers where I need to get a contractor out to meet me to figure out, is this an asset where these condensers are going to be a big part of the purchase price, or am I have $1 million repair bill coming up? This is what I wanted to learn, like really boots on the ground. And so I did that for 7 or 8 years. And then when I left the farm shop, found the shop for rent next door, this building had a for lease sign on it. And I approached the family who owned the building and kind of pled my like good guy, young business person case. And I said, hey, I have a small business. I'm really passionate. I really have done some like trying to pay it forward with YouTube. What I'd love to propose is a scenario where I buy the building versus lease it. Keep in mind, this is a wealthy family who didn't give a fuck about the money. Like, well, my words, not theirs. They're happy to just cash rent checks.
Right.
And to his credit, the patriarch was kind of like, yeah, nice story. I don't really care. He's like, make me an offer and I'll see if I like it. So I thought, shit, okay. To his point, he made me, which is like negotiating 101. Never put yourself in a position where you have to make the first offer.
Right. Yeah.
And so I went back and did my homework, did my math, looked at valuation. And this was stuff that I was probably more comfortable than your average Joe of doing. On the flip side, nowadays with Zillow or CoStar or ChatGPT,
right.
Like, this is not hard.
You go on LoopNet real quick and you're like, oh, there's a comp. I'm done. Like,
exactly, Dylan.
Yeah.
And I figured out what a number was that I could live with, and had talked to bankers about rates. And the long story short was, you could justify this building purchase with, I don't remember, most or all of the mortgage, amortizing mortgage, to be clear. Big difference between amortizing and IO, covering the FedEx rent, covering the mortgage.
Oh, wow.
To me, that's the American dream. It does not exist in major cities. My understanding, prices are such that it doesn't exist, but it does in Zanesville, Ohio. So great.
Amazing. Yeah. So still at that point, so you bought it.
Talked about like no machining, by the way, and we're an hour in.
I think you have covered your machining stuff so well on hundreds, if not 1,000 videos. I think the people behind the companies are the important part here. So you buy this building. It's way bigger than you really needed at that point, obviously, because you're in a little corner office. How do you grow SMW, and when does the fixture plate idea come to you? Because that is I mean, that's a hard right, maybe not a hard right turn from your business, but that has completely changed what you do. And you used to do some job shop work. I kind of want to get into that and the UMC and all that stuff. Yeah. So how did you grow from there? Did you have any employees when you moved in?
We had my first employee was working part-time. And then I think quickly became full-time after we moved in here. By here, I mean the current shop. Yeah.
Right. So you move in, you've got, maybe enough machinery and stuff to fill 15% of it?
No, I had been in 600 to 900 square feet for like 10 years. And overnight, I moved into 10,000 square feet. I mean, I would get a lot. It was insane.
Right. So you move everything in. Do you just like look and go, I have made a royally, I fucked up royally? Like, how did you proceed at that point?
Because it's the same thing as making $200 off of YouTube in 2007. I'm playing with house money. Like that's where I'm a shitty entrepreneur. Is I want to have my cake and eat it too. I don't want to actually bet the farm, and it's probably held me back a lot. Or whatever.
I think you're doing all right. Yeah.
No, I know, but like, well, respectfully, this is probably different. If you would like to have me back sometime, I think there's probably a whole nother conversation that I'd love to have with somebody like you, who's smart, you're in tune, you're young, you're hungry about, and it's the only other person I've ever heard talk about is Danny Rudolph, but like, what is the future of these small manufacturing businesses? I'm proud of Saunders. I'm proud of the team. I love what I do. We're not a company like, say, Send Cut Send. which is doing, 8 figures, I don't know, 9 figures, where there's clear value, there's clear exit opportunities. That's like just a whole nother level. Part of me does wonder if I should have been less controlling or allowed more decisions that would have grown to something like that. It's a very different, even what we do today, running a business is not being a machinist. You get to, I think, I don't know intimately what you do, but you're small enough where I'm assuming you're still very much involved as a machinist.
Oh, I'm making parts every day. Yeah. And I think that I have many thoughts along those same lines of like, should I just be hiring like crazy and scrapping parts and having a really killer QC department instead of like keeping it really small? But like, I love what I do every day. Like I come in and I, for the most part, enjoy what I do every single day. Like there's parts that I hate because I know they're going to be a pain in the ass or I'm running late on them or something. But on the whole, I love what I'm doing and we're growing a business how I want. And I guess that's for now as good as it's going to get.
Do you know the parable of the Brazilian fisherman?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So very much that. I would much rather fish right now than have a million boats fishing for me.
Right. Well, then the punchline of that is so that you can, if you have a million boats fishing for me, you'll have enough money that you can go and fish on your own. And you're like, well, that's what I was doing at the beginning of this story.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why we're heavily looking towards automation and stuff. Like I still want to program parts. I just want to like not be here till midnight running parts. That's what I'm looking towards is not. Yeah. All right. So yeah, you get in there, you got a part-time guy. How do we grow Saunders? Where does it go from here?
One of the VMC had saved up enough to mostly pay for one. I think we paid for the whole thing in cash, but I don't remember totally. Now this is a 3-axis, so we're not.
That was a VF2?
VM3.
Oh, VM3. Oh, right. That was your first one. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So big mistake thinking that like I was only going to ever own and afford one machine. So I kind of blew my wad on one machine, over optioned. Probably could have saved 20% of the purchase price by not trying to think that this would be, but just like my own thinking small mistake. So again, the fixture plate thing wasn't as contrived. It wasn't like I sat down and wrote a business plan. It wasn't like I thought this is my future, my destiny. It was as simple as when I bought my tag in my 5th or 72nd Street apartment, it came with T-slots, and the tag tables are like cosmically narrow and wide.
Yeah.
And this company in Denver called A to Z CNC, which has long been shuttered, I don't know, family business, I think, they sold a number of small accessories. And one of them was this little grid plate that had 1/4 holes on 1-inch center, a rail at the back, kind of like a grinder. And as almost too dumb to know anything, I looked at that and was like, that makes a lot of sense. Like, then I don't have to tram my vise and I have more work area on this thing. And I'm trying to make these strike mark parts. I could lay it directly on this thing. And so I bought one of these and it was great. And then I used it. And then when we bought our first Tormach, we bought a fixture plate from a person who was well known for making fixture plates for Tormachs. And I'm going to phrase this diplomatically, where sometimes in business, there's an opportunity to execute based on delivering on time, a quality product with good communication, having stock. And when we had purchased that plate, we had gotten a bit of a runaround story. They tried to invoice us for more because of drama on their side. Kind of one of those bullshits like, you got to be fucking kidding me.
Right.
That story continued to play out publicly, although I believe a lot of that has been cleverly scraped from the interwebs. But I was just kind of like, look, I want to put my own twist on making these plates and being an offer and a solution. And we were very much tightly ingrained in what Tormachs meant at the time, which was, I think, Tormach was more of a clear player 10 years ago than they are today, unfortunately. I mean, I have very sympathetic feelings for the company because of what it did for us, but the reality is competition is good, and style S7s are great machines, and I hope whatever you get.
I think the 1500 is the first step towards bringing them back, I'm hoping. I know a lot of people there. I know the machine now, seeing it at IMCS, and I'm like, oh, okay, you guys finally like really stepped it up. Because like for the longest time, it was like, these are getting very expensive to the point where it's like, I like somebody would ask me like, should I get an 1100? And it's like, just get a mini mill. Like it's so close in price and you get so much more machine. And now with the 1500, it's like, okay, it's got, rails. It doesn't have gibs anymore, like stuff like that. You're like, all right, man, you've made a modern machine. Thank you.
Yes. So we started making fixture plates, they started selling. We started making more. And then we kind of realized, oh my God, looking back, like how we made them and how we had one machine. So we had to flip between op one, op two. It took forever. Fixturing was terrible. I am very proud of like how we have built that into basically, Dylan, I wanted an excuse to make parts and fixture plates happened to be that vehicle.
Right.
It wasn't an innate, like I wasn't born with a passion for fixture plates. I do have a lot of respect for creative work holding, and I think we will continue to do a better job at playing a role in creative work holding from with the puck chuck and some new clamps we got in the works. But that was it. I was like, I want to make shit, and this is a great way to make them.
But you were also doing job shop stuff still, same time.
Yes, we were. The majority of that work by revenue was to a selected limited number of customers.
But that lasted a while because, like, I remember you talking about it when you had your UMC. Yep. And at that point, you had a few verticals, I want to say.
We bought about 9 months after the VM3, we bought the VF2 with cash profits from the VM3. And that's, I'm a little bit self-conscious that I probably lose some relatability to people when they hear this because this isn't the pathway everyone has gone. But to those that want to do it this way, it's a fucking badass way, which is, it's the example of like, if you can avoid your first car payment, then you can take what that car payment would have been and put it toward your next car payment.
Right.
And that's been a powerful force. So bought the VF2. I think those are the only two verticals we had for a while.
Right. And then I remember you getting the UMC, and I remember you specifically, I think it was on the bomb, saying like that or maybe it was on one of your videos that you like that reinvigorated your passion for making.
Yes. Yeah.
That, you were just making fixture plates and then the occasional job shop stuff, and it was getting kind of maybe not boring, but just routine.
Sure. I don't remember that, to be honest with you, but
okay.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I mean, when I went into that Colorado Springs machine shop that made the strike marks, and I saw I have pictures of this too, which is like freaking awesome. I saw a Fanuc like 4020 do a tool change. I was on the fucking floor.
Mm-hmm.
Like I couldn't believe this was a thing. This is insane to me. And now we do 4,000 tool changes a day, I bet here.
Oh, I totally understand. I remember working in my first shop and we had old Kitamuras from 83 to 95. And I remember thinking wow, this is the height of technology. And, I bought a used Kitamura to start. And then we got our first brother in 2018, I think. And it was like, oh, I've been really far behind the times. And like, I was part of the Instagram community at that point. Like I knew it, but like, it's until you have hands on where you're like, holy shit, like tool setting's the best. Like probing is the best. Like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
So I guess we kind of all know this story of you making fixture plates. At what point, what told you like, we need a hard cut job shop work? How did you, because I would imagine you got a lot of joy out of that. You were working, you're making cool parts. You had some cool customers. That sounds like a really hard decision to make. What made that for you?
What made that for me was the need to recognize I need to stop fucking around with a bunch of different things. What you're not, the context of the story that matters is I had my hand in like 10 different pots. We had a company called Rimfire Steel that was making a 22 rifle targets for people. We were doing Bridgeport auto drawbars. We were doing other shit that I was machining Glock slides at one point. Way too many things. And there's this argument that you could tell yourself of like, hey, I'm making $300 a month from this. I'm making $800 a month from this. Like, this is great. Like, I've got all these different revenue sources. And the reality is I'm not doing anything particularly well.
Right.
And there's a great quote that's, diversification is the lack of conviction.
I like that.
Yeah. And it's like, no, stop. So what we did was we shut off the like random job shop work. We kept one or two customers, and I'm proud to say that they were pissed when I told them this. Like, that's the best feeling.
Oh yeah.
And they were both great where they like, okay, can we trickle these out to you over the next 6-9 months? I'm like, yeah, that's fine, whatever. And then ended up getting them in touch with other shops. But I do remember maybe this was at like kind of peak YouTube where I had, and I think you made a comment to me in IMTS that I really appreciated, and you may not have realized that I really appreciated it, that like, it's awkward when you have some aspect of critical mass, popularity, celebrity-ishness, where I was like, I don't want to recommend shops. That's actually like there's a lot of implications to recommending a shop that I don't want to deal with. Like,
Right.
is it the right shop? Are they going to do quality work? Is this going to come back to me? Blah, blah, blah. That makes sense.
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah. And I think just to share this story publicly, because I thought it, in retrospect, I thought it was very funny. When we were talking at IMTS, I believe I called you or said that I thought you were a dick at the first IMTS. And that's how I started that story because, and the other part of what I shared is that it was like so incredibly cool, but also, awkward and weird being at IMTS. This last IMTS was like kind of the first one where the podcast had been around for a while. And,
dude, you're the celebrity now.
It's so uncomfortable though for me. Like I am not that person who rallies crowds. I love doing this. I love talking to people one-to-one.
You seem you're natural, Dylan.
Well, I appreciate it. But yeah, I was telling you that like I had thought you were just being a dick at the first IMTS. And then only now that I've kind of experienced this, I was like, oh no, it's just overwhelming. Like,
yeah,
it's not that you were ignoring me. It was that there's so many people talking at you all day, every day, that it's just overwhelming for someone like me and apparently for you. Like, and so, yeah, it's cool, but it's tough. All right. Oh, and the one other question I had for you, and this is mainly just to know that I'm not going crazy. You had a YouTube channel at one point where you bought a Humvee and we're going to work on it, right? I'm not like creating memories. Because I was talking to somebody about it.
You are hallucinating. Nothing. Sorry, Dylan.
Like I told somebody about this and they're like, what are you even talking about? I'm like, I swear there was like 2 episodes of this and then it disappeared.
Dude, talk about a royal fuck up. And like one that I so naively didn't understand or see. So again, this is like I don't want to say it's peak YouTube, but certainly like awesome level of YouTubeness. Like we're getting views and momentum and energy and then training classes and fusion. And like people are viewing you as like, hey, thank you. Like sorry, it sounds weird. I have a binder like 4 inches thick of emails I'll print out of people that are like, you've changed my life. I have 3 suicide letters of people that like, I didn't end my life because I found purpose because of you.
Oh,
so I get emotional.
I don't blame you.
And I don't like that stuff because it's just me. I don't care. Like I do care. That's why I do it all. But like, I don't sit here and think, oh, I'm hot shit because I get these emails. So I always printed them out as a way of just being like, just leave them in the corner. I never look at it. But this was an awesome time from an energy standpoint, validating the guy who left his job, switched industries, switched careers, and figured out how to make this happen. And here you're like, this is working. And then I had heard from teachers that they're using our content in classrooms. They're like, we're making your videos formally part of our curriculum. We're pulling up your latest videos to learn and watch and engineering classes and VOTech classes. And then I had 2 or 3 teachers who were like, hey, I'm getting pushback because we can't mess around with firearms on our curriculum. And I had been doing a bunch of firearms stuff on the channel at the time. And so I thought, this is John Saunders thinking like, oh, I've got it all figured out. I'm like, great. I'm going to fork this off. I'm going to start a new YouTube channel and that's going to be all the gun stuff. And oh my God, that was probably one of the worst low moments of my life where all of these people were like, you're a sellout. Like I lost it from both people. The anti-gun people didn't care that I was doing it. And the pro-gun people were like, fuck you. You're a sellout. You're caving to the left. Blah,
really?
Like, oh yeah, it was brutal. And I was like, oh my God. And now of course it's so obvious, but like, that wasn't the point. Like, I don't know that I have a strong political opinion on whether an 8th grade like makerspace can't have an AR-15 suppressor maybe being like
right.
Like,
yeah.
Like there's part of me that's like the more suppressors the better, but then I'm like, no, I get like I care far more about from a humanity standpoint, I care more about people understanding CAM and engineering and machining and passions and less about whether you agree with the fact that I like assault rifles or not. So
right, you were just trying to do the best good or the most good.
Yeah. So that fucking sucked. So the Humvee that was never mine. It was a buddy of mine in town who bought it, and then that was all at the same time. And I was like, we're going to modify this thing. We're going to build the ATF bumper, which is a bumper that had alcohol, tobacco, and firearms inside of it. And we were making suppressor video. This is also when YouTube decided to start, putting you in the penalty box for gun shit. And so,
the adpocalypse. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I appreciate you reminiscing with me because, yeah, I like I said, I there's no record of it that I could find. I also couldn't remember the name. I was like,
Still there.
Freedom something
Freedom
or
Huddle.
Freedom Huddle. Okay.
Yeah, we had a massive logo.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. All right. So then the last, I mean, I think we're at the point where like everybody is intimately familiar with your story here. You're making fixture plates. You've now bought some amazing machinery to make those and also all of your accessories. I do want to kind of talk into what your current machinery looks like, but in light of your story that you've just told me and about focusing and all of that, why Stimptworks? How did you make the business case for that? Because that is a pretty significant departure from what you're doing right now.
Yeah. And it's a little bit of like, am I doing the same mistake of like dipping my toe back in and very quick, like maybe side detour. I spent a lot of the last 2 years focusing back in on Saunders. This speaks to kind of the work-life question, the focus question. Most people know some of this, but we did training classes, we did YouTube stuff, we had Proven Cut, we had the NYC CNC website. I was answering every email I could with like helping people, which isn't sustainable. And so I basically focused that back in much more from a like, hey, this needs to be Saunders Machine Works first. And Saunders Machine Works in the last 3-4 years has become what I'll call a very legitimate company in terms of the who we're selling to, the quantity of orders that are shipped, the expectation, blah, blah, blah. So I'm actually quite proud of like having focused in on that stuff by cleaning all that up. But my high school friend's dad had a 1997 Carrera 4S, which was the last air-cooled era, the 993s. And I love that car, the beautiful look of it. And I'd always kind of wanted one. And about 4 or 5 years ago, I kept having acquaintances buy used cars like this and they like not lose money. It's not an investment. There's no expectation of it gaining, but it wasn't like you're buying a car for X and it cuts in half a year later.
Right.
And so I was kind of like, you know what? Like kind of a YOLO moment of like, I'm going to see if I can find one. Why not? And so I found one. And so I bought one that was going to need an engine out timing chain leak. It's an engine out fix, and ended up finding a guy in the Central Ohio area who only works on air-cooled cars. He has like 2 lift garage. He does a couple cars a year, like very, like you would love this guy. Like he's a very focused guy. He's wonderful at what he does, and got to know him kind of in the same guise of like, be a good guy, pay it forward. Like everyone's clamoring for this guy to take their car on and do work and annoy him. And I kind of just played it cool and was like, hey, love with this. And then we machined him a sign of his business. Like this is a kind of like a cheap way to like genuinely get to know somebody. Is I just showed up once when he was going to work on the car and I brought him a machined 30-inch sign that had an epoxy color fill with his logo. It was machined beautifully. And I was like, Jeff, like I get to do what I love. We just want to make this for fun. And that sort of thing, when you play it out over the course of the year, he then was like, hey, would you ever be able to make something like this? And I was like, yep, that's how we would do this. And he had an engineer friend who had no manufacturing experience that was asking questions. And then one thing led to another. And he had a bunch of these parts that he wants to put on engines that he rebuilds. And he's like, hey, this sucks, or this is out of stock, or this is expensive. Or the best one is, this doesn't have clearance for me to get Allen wrenches in. And it could if it was filleted instead of here.
Oh.
So instead of talking about that, we just made one and FedExed it to him. And like, that's kind of one of those, like, I'm not here to dick around. Like, if you want to make this, we'll make them. It was actually great. He didn't want a partnership. He wanted a distributor cut. But he didn't want to like get into bed together.
Perfect.
Well, there was never like, he's got his own thing going on. And this is, Stimptworks total revenue might be like 8 hours of Saunders. Like it's not a big business.
Right.
That's the answer. Sorry.
Well, and that was more why my question is that it sounds like it is just a passion project, and that's how you're, I guess, justifying it.
Yeah. Alex, who is our head engineer, is also a Porsche guy and loves it. And that's important for me to give him the chance to grow and have fun with it. And he has a lot of autonomy on his decisions around that. He's kind of the CEO and president, if you will, of that little thing.
Okay.
Which is a chance to give him some leadership and chance to do what he wants, like do what you want on his And it is mildly detrimental to one machine where we get some conflicting work orders between Saunders and Shimpworks on it. But it's fun. Like to some extent, I'm going to use the excuse of like, if you can't do some of this stuff, then what are you doing it all for? Like it's fun to make the stuff we make there.
No, that's totally fine. All right. I do want to get to our questions from at least Patreon. We are running a little long, but you mentioned your training classes, and that's another one that I wanted to talk about. I think we all know that you had training classes. I know a ton of people who went to them and really enjoyed them. Why did you end up closing them? And then what are you using that building for now?
Okay. We've had two teachers. Well, I taught them. Then we had Kevin Ellingson, Mechanical Advantage. Kevin was great. He taught them up until COVID. COVID obviously mucked that up.
Right.
And there's a lot, probably the unspoken part of training classes is there are some frustrating headaches. So we had one situation where a person was very unhappy for in a very unreasonable situation that I'm not even going to get into.
Okay.
About like, this is crazy. It was a unbelievable concern about age discrimination that was totally unfounded, but like, you're not going to win in the, like, just stupid. I'll stand up for our guys all day long on what happened. And it wasn't a big deal. I'm making it sound like that, but these little things are weird.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, then we started post-COVID, and then Vince came in. Vince was also phenomenal. I loved it. It was very hard though to build a business because teaching is exhausting. So you can't do it like back-to-back classes throughout the month, which means you have this equipment that sits idle, or we were using it for R&D, but it was in the other shop, the other building, and it wasn't like just all these quirky little frustrations. Like, well, we don't have RO water over there. We don't have calipers over there. Like it's just not fun.
Right.
And, but it was working. We weren't losing money, but it was hard. The numbers were tough when you really looked at like, hey, wait a minute here. If you could teach full time, that'd be different.
Mm-hmm.
Punchline, Vince moved to Arizona.
Phoenix. Yeah.
And I, at this point, didn't really want to spend this right when I was starting this, like, hey, let's focus on what we're doing. The idea and it's all about the teacher. Like, you've got to have a great teacher. And I didn't want to find someone locally. Didn't think I could. Didn't want to think about trying to recruit somebody in to move here. And it truly sucks because they were great classes that I don't believe have been really replicated, where like for 3 days. So, and this exists now, like you can go take shooting classes, photography classes. There's artistic classes where like for 3 days, I want to go take this like expert level immersive thing, which I love. It's so cool.
Yeah.
But when Vince was out, I was like, okay, let's basically sell that equipment. That's what funded the Williman. And then the building, which I own or had bought when it was for sale, I was like, I don't want to buy this right now. It's a stretch, but I also am like, somebody else buys it, I'm going to kick myself. That's my one chance. So the building got rented out. Is the short answer to it.
Okay, cool. So you touched on your machinery. Those are the other. I've got that question. I got one more before we get to Patreon questions. Okuma and Williman. I think that many people saw those purchases and were like, "What is John doing?" I mean, maybe not the Okuma 3-axis, but like to invest that much into the horizontal. I think I don't know that many people saw that vision that you did, and clearly it's working out for you guys. It runs all the time. At what point did you say like, "Oh, I gotta get one of these"?
Dude, we would have not made it through 2022 without it. So we were taking a vertical. It was either I think it was the VF3, and we were using dual station orange vices and switching out fixturing to make our insert bars. That would make them smooth, serrated, whatever. And like looking back on that, you're like, oh my God, like now we have a 6 tombstone horizontal that makes all these different product line accessories. Automation is, if you haven't lived and breathed well, everyone's different, but for me, I'd heard about automation. I'd been to toured shops. I've talked to people, blah, blah, blah. But until you actually own it and embrace it, it's a different thing for me. Maybe that's just because I'm stubborn or dense, but like knowing that I can walk out after we hang up on this call and I can go pull up a fixture that has this on it, or a part that has this on it. The tools are already in there. The fixture's already in there. You can run it on demand as you need to is 100% the way to go. So even though by numbers our shop looks like a vertical oriented shop, the way I sort of think about it, and you can call me out on bullshit here, is that we have a bunch of verticals that make product specific fixture plates, which have to be on a vertical for all practical purposes. And then we have a Wilman and we have a horizontal that are highly automated machines that make just in time, as needed products at a high quality with processes. Like I can start putting on superlatives, but they're fucking awesome.
Right. So let's jump into the Wilman then. I think that's another one where people saw the initial products you were putting on it and they're like, what are you doing, John? Like, why you had an ST20, ST30? This is totally an ST30 with a live tooling part. Why would you invest so much in a highly specialized machine? And I think now with your pull studs and hard turning and all of that, it maybe makes a little bit more sense, but talk me through that. I mean, that's a big jump from an ST to a Wilman, even a used 408.
Yeah. So that is huge. The two things that happened here that are so key. Number one, a complete credit to CJ Abraham. Him buying a Wilman is what gave me the vision to see it. And his work on the posts and in the workflows are like, I owe him all that, period. But then the second thing was like, yeah, I'm not buying a new Wilman. That's fucking crazy. So we found the used one, and you can't always replicate or make these things happen, but we bought it from Wilman with a small warranty, and them having gone through it. And like, that was huge and a very different outcome than buying one that it doesn't work or is a question mark behind it.
Right.
We used it for a year. I was like, this is freaking awesome. So then it's just money, and which means how much do I need to make on this thing? And, a machine like a Wilman, you can pull up, a basic use of Excel. If you don't know Excel, YouTube or ChatGPT, but how many hours in a year, how many hours do you think you can run it? How many parts do you have to feed it? How many new parts would you need? What's the downside risk? What could we go back to doing job shop work or other stuff if we had to? And you start to realize, wait a minute, to make the numbers work on a Wilman, which is, it was double the price of the horizontal.
Right.
I need to make, what it was it $20 or $70 an hour? If you're running it like 20 hours a day, which we're not yet, but I have the downside protection of like, okay, but we can figure out how to make this work.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. All right. I definitely want to get to at least the Patreon questions. Doug asked, what were the toughest lessons learned so far for running a product business?
The toughest lessons for me are detaching yourself as the owner of the business, the inventor of the product, and the person who wants to see it succeed from what a customer is going to see. Most of our customers, we're so happy, we're so grateful. It's the best feeling in the world when somebody buys a fixture plate. And there are some people that are like, hey, so happy to support your business, love that I'm in the Saunders ecosystem. That's great. The reality is most people, a fixture plate shows up, and it's just the same thing as like when a YG1 end mill shows up. It's just a fucking tool. Like, I don't really care. It's just supposed to do a job. And so I think myself and a lot of entrepreneurs don't do a good enough job at recognizing like it's just another tool or toy or thing to the end user. They're not going to ever have the same level of passion and interest. So that speaks to like, okay, how do you use this? Instruction, marketing, call to actions, how to just that aspect of it. And this was worse for like some of the prior products I made. Like the Bridgeport drawbar was one I've always thought of as a really good example of a failure where it's like, we didn't do anything to really show off the build quality, the manufacturing quality. Frankly, it was like shit. But those were so now we try to think about that differently with Shimtorch. We do packaging, we do photos, better stuff. This is all basic. Like Grimsmo, this wouldn't apply to Grimsmo because he comes at it the complete opposite way. It's like, that's the only way he views the world, is like this amazingness to it. That makes sense?
Oh yeah. He is great at engendering that kind of passion in his customers. I think. Yeah. His question for me was, what's the toughest lessons I've learned so far with running a service business? And I think that's just like balancing what the customer wants with what's actually possible, especially as a small shop. Like my entire customer base is, I want it yesterday. And it's like, okay, but like how many yesterdays do I actually have that I can fill up? And I'm constantly battling that. That's why we're going to buy something automated in the next two months, hopefully. Like I want it installed this year. It's just tough. Yeah.
Because everything I've heard about you through the grapevine is like, you do great work, you do fast work, you do complicated work. But it's fast stuff. So like, how do you deal with that as a small shop, new parent? Like, are you grinding? Are you stressing? Are you missing deadlines?
I'd say probably a little bit of everything. Like we're at the point right now, especially with only one 5-axis spindle, where like that is the weak point in my thing. So if something takes a little bit longer on there, it's like, okay, everything else got pushed back. And like, that means I'm working a late night or a couple late nights to kind of catch up. It's tough. It's really tough, but I think that like you can either be very fast and very good and very expensive, or you can be, less of those things and be less expensive and go after that kind of market. And like, we've kind of gone after that high end market of like, people need it yesterday. And I think we're doing pretty good. Like we're definitely not perfect. We don't have 100% ship on time rate. I wish I could say that we did, but we're doing pretty well there. Our quality is, I think, the best thing that we have. Like we almost never, I think we've had maybe 2 or 3 quality issues in 10 years.
Yeah, that's awesome. Good for you.
And so that's mainly what we focus on, is like, we might make a bad part, but it doesn't get to our customer kind of thing.
Remind me, are you using, I forget what ERP software you use, and does it factor in scheduling? And are you putting quotes in? Oh, wow.
No. So we're just starting to use the one that Juan developed, Juan and Blake.
Okay. What from
Jack's manufacturing. Yeah. InFab. And that's great. I'm sure that they'll have scheduling at some point. I was pushing on Pete a lot when he was building up the calendar side of Chatter to help me with scheduling. I would say scheduling is the hardest part of it. And it's, I have listened to you and John say for years that things take pi longer than you think they will. And yet I'm still maybe at like a 2x multiple and realizing that it needs to be 3.14. So, it's constant learning of like, okay, everything's going to take a little bit longer than we need, and refining those processes every time so that it doesn't take 3 times longer than I think. And we're getting better. And I think with automation will be even better if I'm not having to set tools every time, if I'm not having to, all of that. Like the Hermla we're looking at will have 118 tools, which will be
it's great.
Amazing. And then his question for both of us was, for the next few years, what do you anticipate to be the top challenges for your business?
I don't think like that. I tend to not think on really, to me, I focus on what's on my task today and this week. And there's some aspect of it, I need to take a step back and make sure you're steering the ship long-term. Sorry, or automatic rights.
No worries. I have those in most rooms except for this one for that reason.
So there's plenty of things I worry about, stress about, think about. I guess the most helpful answer that I'll share very candidly will be my own realization over the past few years that I've been so proud to not have a partner. I don't have a board of directors to report into. I don't have a boss. I don't even have, we can talk about this if you want to. We actually do have a loan on one thing, but like I don't have lender burdens in terms of reporting and interrogations. Sometimes having any or all of those things is a good thing, to have you focused and accountable and metrics that matter. You can say they don't matter, but like I'm not some trust fund like shop where you just dick around. Like, no, this is a real business. Like it has to generate. I've been fortunate enough to tackle some risk things that I like, but like, that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. I would say the top challenge for us is just continuing to grow so that we can remain small, but not piss off our customers. Like our whole thing is like, how do I grow this and still enjoy coming to work and not have the burden of a bunch of employees trying to make this work? Like I am very much committed to keeping this as small as possible. I have friends who have a lot of employees, and I see the drain that it is on both capital and just like mental, like having to deal with all of those people. It's a challenge enough having a business partner. Like I love Brad and we work well together, but it's not, roses all the time. Like there's very much days where I'm like, man, I fucking hate that guy today. Like,
dude, if unsolicited advice, but if I were you, like knowing how smart you are, how successful you've been at building this up to where it is, you could run 3 automated Hermlas. You single-handedly could have 3 of them running. You are never going to touch off a fucking tool again in your life. You are never going to set up a fixture again in your life. I mean, you're going to have this stuff, whether it's HS Flex or Lang, like you're going to have that shit already pre-dialed in the workflows, and you will kill it. So like, that's the lesson that I probably didn't have enough vision and confidence on early on, was to be like, no, like just do it. So like the things like the horizontal and the Wilhelm, which were not as risky as what I just said to you, like go buy 3 automated 5-axis machines, like you would kill it, Dylan. So don't wait.
We'll get there slowly but surely. We're trying to navigate that for sure. Paul asked, can you speak to the transition from so we've talked about the transition from the corporate world from Strike Mark to Saunders Machine Works. Did you have any certain benchmarks that you wanted to hit when you left your job? That is a very good question that we didn't talk about. Was there a certain amount of revenue that you were like, oh, this is the time to cut and run, or it was just, I have a new son, I need to get out of the suburbs?
The most vivid benchmark I remember thinking was actually the one where I'm like, I'm not willing to spend, I forget, maybe I'd saved up 20 grand for Strike Mark and all that. I was like, I'm not willing to spend all my savings and lose my day job to go start up a business. Like, I'll take one or the other, but not both. So that's kind of where I earned my way out. And that's where, I don't say this as much as I used to, but like, I'm not super sympathetic to people that are, I don't know, my unkind words are pity victims. It's like, go work a second job, go drive an Uber, go work 2 shifts. Like, anybody can save up 3, 5, 10 grand if you want to. Now, yes, it becomes more complicated if you have young kids. It becomes more difficult if you have a child support payment. It becomes more difficult if you want to buy a case of beer every day. But this is my grandpa coming through me. Like,
No, I grew up in a family that was very much like, you can do whatever you want. It was not that you are a special snowflake. It was, you can do whatever you want as long as you put in the work, as long as you nose down and grind it out. Like, it's going to suck, but you can do it. Yeah. So just choose your own suck, I guess, like is the phrase I've heard. John asked, how long of a time frame do you give yourself to try something out, like the cam machining training? What thoughts or milestones do you have or set in order to change gears or focus on something else? Do you take on job shop work ever, or do you just try to keep the machines running with your current products as well as the new ones like the Porsche products?
I think we've talked about a lot of that type of stuff.
So I guess maybe the time frame one is the best one. At what point, like how long do you give yourself to make something work? Like the puck chuck. Like if you hadn't seen that bar start going up and sales start going up, how quickly would you have dumped that product for something else?
I think what I have to do is I have to stop and take a step back and think about, will I be better off? Will the company be better off? Will our stakeholders, our employees be better off if we just deep six this thing? And that's hard to do. It's somewhat kind of like suicidal in a weird way like that. Like, but, what will you be better off? Will anybody notice or care? We have discontinued some products quietly, and you get a couple random complaints, and we've kept some old stock on some stuff to placate those. But point being is that none of these things, notwithstanding the complication around training with like a building and extra machinery, most of the stuff is much more nebulous about like, let's add this, let's delete this. It's not adding or subtracting equipment. Mm-hmm. Although the one that I actually really wanted to talk to you about at some point was like kind of this idea of like, what are return, and you or your audience, don't lose me on this, ROI, ROA, ROE, like return on assets, investment equity, and how do you think about those? And I think there are many situations with small businesses where you may not care about it now, but I guarantee you the footprint, how much space you have, how you can grow your physical size, return on investment, all these things you're going to care about unless you stay truly like absolute flat forever, which most people don't.
Right. Yeah. I mean, typically if you're staying flat, you're actually declining just because of how it works. So like maybe let's focus on proven cut. What made you decide to get rid of that?
Same thing of just, I needed to focus on Saunders. I was not adding, and my passion was not proven cut. And then what I'll do, and you've probably heard me talk about this on the bomb, might sound a little bit weird, but I really try to get myself in a state of mind that is much more freeing. And I don't know if you do yoga, but I've done it with my wife, or I'm not against doing it, and it's great, but you can't go and just start full on stretching and having that mental state. You actually have to spend some time getting into that mindset. So I will try to do that. And I try to think about if money were no object and you could pick an amount, $100,000, $10 million, doesn't matter. Like if somebody just said, you won the lottery, here's $10 million, would I, and I love what, like, there's a whole bunch of mental exercise you can do around that. Like I would not go buy a Ferrari or like quit my job. Like, no, I just figure out how many more spindles am I buying and where am I putting them? But like, but within a framework that has to be sustainable, right? Like you can't subsidize a failing business with a balance sheet. That's a big mistake. But with Proven Cut, I was just like, man, I would not jump back on the hustle of Proven Cut, adding recipes, really, really building that. I just wouldn't. And so I was like, let's see if I can sell it. And we sold it.
Okay. So I think that might be the surprising thing to listeners is that for someone who has the business background you do, that it is much more feeling based than balance sheet based. I mean, obviously you're looking at numbers, but it doesn't sound like you were looking at Proven Cut and being like, it's losing me this much money per month, or it's gaining me this much money per month, and that's not enough. It sounds like it was more like, oh yeah, I want to focus on Saunders Machine Works, and this is extraneous.
Yeah, I know it's all about. I'm not that. I don't know. I guess you never know what people think of you, but like I'm never that like I actually am genuinely passionate. I was passionate about Proven Cut, passionate about training, YouTube, like, and so it's much more about this would be in the perfect world. What you'd want is have somebody that's going to take that business and they're going to blow you out of the water with what they do with it. That probably isn't going to happen in the case of Proven Cut. And I didn't know that at the time. And when you sell a company, you sell it. You don't know what's going to happen per se.
Right.
But I'm proud of how it helped people and who it helped. And I would love to be like, oh man, they really took it to a level I couldn't have. That's the dream.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Ryan from the Patreon asked, and I don't know if he is asking this because of the bomb or because he doesn't listen to the bomb, but how has your coolant management adapted as you've grown? What did you do in the early days with one machine, and how has that changed with your current shop and use? This has been on the mind as of late, and so I know that you are even currently evolving this. Tell us about bad coolant.
Yeah, we let a machine go bad. It's our fault. But my defense is that like we haven't really swapped out coolant on machines a lot ever after years, and through top offs it gets freshened up, but we haven't done full clean outs. The VF3 we had made some plastic fixture plate covers for a customer, and that made, I think, the retention of chips and tank stuff even worse. It looked like 200 pounds of dried rice or wet rice in the tank. Anyway, the X-Air sucks. And this is a good thing. I hope I lead by example of where like it's good even as much as we've grown to where there are days or weeks or months that go by where I don't hit cycle start, which I don't even love, but like, yeah, there's some part of like, that's the right thing. But it's also like good to go do shitty jobs or I don't even, it's not even shitty jobs. It's just work. And like the X-Air sucked, and the X-Air is not fun to use, the thing we have now. And so that's not like, well, do I care? How often do we need it? Like, it's okay to work around a less than ideal tool, because the Freddy was more than I wanted to spend. But I was like, this is still too fundamentally key to the ongoing operation. And it ties into that thing we started earlier this year of like, hey, let's pick a bunch of things that are going to make this place better. New tables, new lights. It made sense to be able to quickly empty a tank, clean the coolant, freshen it up, whatever. We've not done any sort of a automated coolant top off. We have water lines run. We don't do there's a bunch of subscription service coolant.
Yeah, liquid tool, stuff like that. Do that. I am looking into it. I am not super stoked on the fact that it's a subscription. Like I in the last maybe, I don't know, year and a half, I've become like very anti SaaS if I can help it. Like I don't want another subscription. I don't want another login. I don't want another app. I just want something to work. So yeah, we'll see what happens. All right. I think we only have time for really maybe one or two Instagram questions. I thought Ethan's was pretty great. He said, you're probably too humble to answer this, but he'd love to know what you think of the breakdown of luck versus hard work has been for you. You mentioned on the bomb years ago that you used to get offended when people said or asked how you got so lucky. And he's curious what another 5 years of wisdom has done to that statement. My memory was I would get more offended when people would sort of imply that, like, I think one person was spreading a rumor that like, I don't even know what it was. Something about the money. You were like a trust fund kid or something. Right. Okay. Which I'm happy to tell you is 0% true.
you could criticize me for being abnormal was, yes, I did work 10 years in a different career and save that money to get into this, but I'm not going to apologize for that. That's just deliberate.
You worked hard. That's
right.
Totally fine. Yeah.
And I've heard a bunch of answers to this question over the years, and it's not that I don't like the question, but I was like, what can I say that's maybe different perspective? There's one aspect that's very humbling and grounding of like, we're all lucky. We were born, in my opinion, the greatest country in the world, but certainly any country in this point in time, in this civilization, with advents of technology, quality of life, healthcare, internet, like it's fucking great. There's zero chance you would want to become a badass in like 1842 right now. Like zero chance. So we're all lucky in that sense. I also will say, through whether it's some of the school shit I went through or work, I've known a lot of people who were born rich, got rich, or flip side, were incredibly intelligent, like mind-blowingly intelligent, who are fuck-ups, were fuck-ups, unhappy, not living a fulfilling life. And what that all comes back to me on is understanding that ultimately I identify with the sense of a work discipline that gives you that sense of identity and a fulfilling life and a fulfilling career in what you do. That's not luck. It's luck that I was exposed to things that I think led me to feel that way. My parents, my grandparents' upbringing, my parents, to be clear, they paid for my college, so I did not leave with debt. That is for sure lucky. But lots of people that do it and then fuck things up, right? Whatever. So that was kind of my, what's the luck comes to those that work hard for it type of thing,
Yeah, well, I think I've got two comments on that. One is I saw an interview recently with the founder of Costco.
Okay.
And he said anybody who's successful who doesn't attribute some of it to luck is full of shit or something like that. I think I'm paraphrasing poorly, and I think that cliche of luck is when preparation meets opportunity.
Yeah, bingo.
Like, I think that it's cliche for a reason, and it's so true. Like, yes, maybe you being able to buy your facility when you did,
right,
with all of those things lining up, that's luck, but you were also prepared. You knew how to do comps. You knew how to do all of this stuff and provide a offer that worked. And like, I think that's, so I very much feel like that's what luck is.
Luck was me starting a YouTube channel instead of like a real player or whatever in 2007.
Right.
That's luck.
Yeah. Yeah. We could have all watched you and had 5 videos on Vimeo, and then we never would have known the name. Yeah. The only other Instagram question I'll ask real quick, tongue in cheek, Amish asked, who's his favorite Canadian? He better get this right.
Yeah, this is a tough one because there's my 3 good friends, Amish, Dr. Phil, and obviously Mr. John Grimsmo. I can't pick Amish just because, cutting down 1 gondola is bad, but cutting down 2 gondola lines it's just really, and then starting these forest fires and then breaking taps. No, I'm just trolling it. Amish, they're all great.
Yeah, they are. I completely agree. All right. Well, that brings us to the last few questions I ask every guest every week. Give me one cam metrology business tip or trick that has helped you this week.
Was I allowed to prepare these?
If you wanted to.
Okay, great. I was like, I don't know if you're supposed to ask me these on the spot.
No.
Okay, the best trick I've learned that is not technically directly answering this, but it blew me away. And forgive me if you're an Android user, because this is only an iPhone use thing. But when you type out a long message, which is part of my business, I guess, and you need to move the cursor on an iPhone, it fucking sucks. Trying to use your index finger to move the cursor, it ends up if you just hold down on the space bar, it changes the space bar into a slider.
It's on Android too.
Oh my God.
I do it on my iPhone too. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Shit.
Yeah, I just found that out recently. And then I think if you hold Control at the same time, it'll let you select with the space bar.
Oh, my, like swipe select stuff?
Like if you hold your thumb on the space bar and then hit Control and then swipe on the space bar, it'll select from wherever you hit Control. I believe it's one of those buttons.
Yeah.
But I just saw that tip or trick in like a reel the other day, and I was like, "You've got to be kidding me! I've spent so much time."
But the real answer to this question that isn't necessarily this week, but is top of mind, has been detaching my personal life and personal finances from the business, and that comes back to that topic of like, okay, how do I think about Saunders and return on assets and what I want to pay myself versus what I want to pour back into the business, and detaching them in a healthy way. And maybe talk more about that if I ever come back on.
I would love to have you back on because I have a million things that I didn't ask you. So yeah, we'll definitely have to do another episode if you're up for it. what challenge are you facing and where are you looking for help?
Metallurgy. Some of the new products I want to think about is what's the right tool steel, what's the right condition, soft versus hard milling and grinding, and elasticity and long-term surface rust and coatings and nitriding and DLC and all of that stuff. I'd like to say that like I could start asking the questions, but the reality is if I fast forward 3 years, I'll probably look back and be like, man, I didn't know shit back then.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to learn.
Okay. Well, any listeners who are into metals, please reach out to John. Work-life balance, what does it mean to you and how do you manage it? Is it any different from 5 or 10 years ago?
So same thing to the luck question. I quote unquote don't like this question because it gets asked a lot. Not that it's not a good question, but what's the different answer I can say, or adding something that perhaps others haven't heard? Because one of the times what you'll hear successful people talk about, oh man, I look back and I shouldn't have maybe worked so hard, or it was a biggest price to pay. But there's an implicit survivorship bias where they get to have that opinion because they fucking made it, which the answer is work hard. Like, if you don't want to, fine, don't. But like, my favorite sort of view on this is Warren Buffett's quote about his kids, which is, I want to give my kids enough money that they can do anything, but not enough that they can do nothing. You shouldn't expect to live a lifestyle beyond the means of what you earn. It's just a big thing for me. And so I don't care how hard you want to work. I just care about what you want to expect out of that. If that makes sense. I have a great life. I don't have to work nights. I don't have to work weekends anymore. I did for 12 years probably. Like really worked my butt off.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think at the end of the day, the thing I've said on here is like, I enjoy work. So like it's tough to say like work-life balance. Like I really enjoy coming in. I enjoy making parts. I enjoy growing the business. And so like, yeah, sometimes I work late nights, or yeah, sometimes I work on the weekends, but like, what would I be doing otherwise? Like, yes, I'd love to say like, oh, I'd eke out every single moment with my wife. But like, to be completely honest, we'd probably just be on our phones together a little bit more, or like watching a movie, or like, stuff that like, sure would be nice, but is not like, I am enjoying it. I'm not like hurting being here.
Yes.
I guess.
This will change. I think you having a kid, which reminds me of a funny quote my old boss gave me, which is the hardest thing about becoming a new parent is graciously accepting unsolicited advice.
I'm all about it. Let's bring it on.
I don't have advice other than to say life will change. Like I do love the fact that I can choose to attend every single sport event or time with my kid. I want to. I also will raise my kids the way I was raised, which is that like, you may not get to go to the soccer camp on a Saturday because you're going to work. You're going to work on the farm, or you're going to work here. I'm okay with that kind of balance because, the weird thing about success is that, I don't want to grow into a company where you can give your kids nothing to do. So it's kind of like, I don't even know how much, this sounds weird, but like, I don't know how much I want to, like, whatever.
No, I understand. You don't want to spoil your kid. Like it's really, I can already tell, like I want, like you said, I want to have enough money that they can do anything, but I don't want them to do nothing. And I think that that's incredibly tough. Second to last, what is a thing that doesn't really pencil out that you've bought that you wouldn't be without just for reduced aggravation, fatigue, or aversion?
I tongue-in-cheek would answer that, the Williman.
I mean, fair, yeah.
But in the spirit of the With Intolerance episodes that I've listened to, the answer there that I think fits right down the middle is the Durham screw bins. Are you familiar with these?
I know the name Durham. I don't know that I know their screw bins.
So you probably have seen them. It's spelled like the Raleigh or the North Carolina city, and they are metal. They make different sizes, but they're sheet metal bins, powder coated, that are about the size of a college textbook or whatever, big school textbook. And they have trays inside of different grid things you can buy. And then I bought the pull-out slides for them. So this was a Johnny 5 need where we now have so many fucking fasteners. Oh my God. It's just ridiculous. And I was putting them we had a big Lista cabinet that didn't work because Johnny 5's at home. And then I was buying the fishing tackle boxes from Amazon that are cheap because I'm cheap. And then that didn't work because they break and you're getting in and out of them. And so I went and splurged, and it was probably like $1,200 to buy 2 towers of Durham bins with the slider doors. And it's just insane. You feel like it's great.
That is speaking right to me because I am in the middle of redoing our assembly space, and I equally have more fasteners than I ever need because I get, I have a onesie twosie part and they're like, hey, I need these pins and these helicoils. And it's like, cool. So I can only buy those pins in a pack of 100 and I'm going to use 2 of them. And it's like, I don't want to throw away 98 M4 or 4mm pins. So that I will definitely check those out. I appreciate that. Last up, what have you been researching this week? It does not have to be manufacturing related. It's just interesting to hear what interesting people are looking into.
Yeah, my answer to that is 100% Johnny 5. I have an electrical problem on him right now where I'm burning up a 60 amp solid state relay, not immediately upon turn on, but within a couple of days. And tip of the hat, shout out to Spencer Webb. He's helping me troubleshoot it. I suspect it's an induction driven voltage spike where a Zener diode could help protect it, but I want to cure the symptom, I want to cure the cause, not the symptom.
Right.
So trying to start thinking about why I could be getting that situation happening, which is just enough outside of my comfort zone to like, okay, I need to like pour myself a cup of coffee and start looking at what's going on here.
Okay. Awesome. Well, John, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you taking so much time with me. I didn't know if we'd hit the 2-hour mark, but we definitely did. And thank you so much. Oh, no. My audience loves the long episodes. Oh. There's nobody, if anybody's driving around the parking lot at this point, they are fully wanting to drive around in the parking lot. They know a
sailboat around Victoria Island.
Yeah. He's got plenty of time now. They take a long time, right? It's all wind powered. But again, thank you so much. Please let us know where they can find you, what your newest products are, all that stuff. This is your chance to plug anything you want to plug.
No, I appreciate it. And honestly, Dylan, thank you. I appreciate it. And I appreciate your comment to me about like, if I was a dick to you, I'm sorry. Because at the end of the day, most people actually aren't dicks when you get to know them. I thought that was a funny sort of whatever event. But yeah, Saunders Machine Works is our company, Instagram, website. If you want to have better fixturing for your CNC machine, not tram and vices, you want a modular vice system, or are for sale, but really the future is more to come on the Puck Chuck 0-point system. We'd love to earn your business. We're very proud of how we manufacture the fixture plates on the modified system from a value standpoint and a function standpoint, and just generally love to be a member of this community, pay it forward by sharing the knowledge, and trying to keep it candid in a way where we share a lot of successes and where we suck and failures and get our butts kicked.
Yeah. That is one thing I think we all have appreciated about your videos over the years is like you have definitely had a healthy dose of like, man, these things suck. Like your crash videos were always a highlight. I mean, maybe not for you, but for us, it was just like, oh, that really hurts to watch. So again, thank you so much. Thanks to all the Patreon members who make this show possible. And I will be back next week.